Welcome back to Mrs. Rundown. In today's video I am going to be recapping the events of Pretty Woman, a 1990 romance/comedy film. Spoilers ahead. You have been warned. Now like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this video. Edward Lewis is a high-powered corporate raider from New York. He buys and dismantles struggling companies, selling off the assets for profit. He wants his girlfriend to accompany him during a business trip, but fed up with being his beck and call girl, she ends their relationship. This all takes place at a swanky party held by his partner Philip Stuckey, and he decides to cut loose in Stuckey's Lotus. He gets lost and accidentally stops along Hollywood Boulevard in the city's red light district. There he encounters prostitute Vivian Ward. He asks for directions from hooker Vivian Ward. She charges him, then gets in. As he is having difficulties driving a manual transmission car, he pays Vivian to drive him to the Regent Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Edward then impulsively hires her for the night. He asks her up to his penthouse suite on a whim and pays her to stay all night. Although he seems uncomfortable at first and despite some awkwardness, he finds her charming and gets on well with her. The next day, he asks Vivian to play his girlfriend that week at a series of business events he's attending while attempting a takeover of shipbuilder James Morse's company. Edward offers Vivian $3,000 for 6 days. He also gives her money for clothes and says she needs to be at his beck and call with no strings attached. Vivian excitedly accepts. She calls her roommate Kit to leave her money for the rent, and goes shopping on Rodeo Drive for more appropriate clothes. But when she attempts to go shopping on Rodeo Drive, a snooty saleswoman won't serve her as she is still dressed like a hooker, and so she returns to the hotel, where she gets stopped by the hotel manager, Barney. He wants to make it clear that they are making an exception having her at the hotel as Edward is such a special guest. Vivian gets upset as she still has no outfit for dinner, and Barney helps her, along with coaching her on dinner etiquette. When Edward returns, Edward is impressed by Vivian's transformation and opens up to her, revealing details about his personal and business life, including his turbulent relationship with his late father. The next day, Vivian tells him about the experience shopping the previous day, and Edward takes her back to spend an obscene amount of money on clothes, leaving her to go back to his work as she is transformed from hooker to lady. She goes back to the shop from the previous day to show them the big mistake they made. Back at the hotel, she looks like a genuine guest, but when Edward gets home he is still busy with work, and they take a bath together and talk into the night about their pasts and how they ended up where they are today. The following day, Edward takes Vivian to the polo. While Vivian chats to David Morse, the grandson of the man involved in Edward's latest deal, Philip is worried she is a corporate spy. Edward reassures him by telling him how they met and that she's a hooker. Later at the event Philip comes on to Vivian. When they return to the hotel, she is furious with Edward for telling him, and plans to leave, but he persuades her to see out the week. Edward leaves work early the next day and takes Vivian by private jet to see La Traviata at the San Francisco Opera. The story of a prostitute who falls in love with a rich man moves Vivian. She clearly is moved by the music, and says, "If I forget to tell you later, I had a wonderful time tonight." On returning to the hotel, he falls asleep while she is getting ready for bed. Vivian then kisses him on the lips. She doesn't do this with clients, and they make love as partners, rather than client and hooker. After mistakenly believing Edward is asleep, Vivian admits she loves him. Edward's return to New York is imminent, so over breakfast, Edward offers to help Vivian get off the streets and suggests putting her up in a nice condo and giving her an allowance, promising to visit her regularly. So, he can continue seeing her, but she feels insulted as Edward is still treating her like a prostitute, and says this is not the fairy tale she wants. He then goes off to work without resolving the situation. Kit then comes to the hotel and sees that she has fallen for him, but she denies it. Edward meets Morse, about to close the deal, and changes his mind at the last minute. His time with Vivian has shown him another way of being. He wants to create things rather than just making money. He chooses to work with Morse to save his company instead of dismantling it. Philip is livid, furious that Edward's new direction has cost him a fortune, and goes to the hotel. Vivian is there and he blames her for changing Edward's character. He attempts to rape her and then hits her. Edward returns just in time and pulls him off. Edward then fires him and chucks him out. With his business in LA complete, Edward asks Vivian to stay with him one more night, but only because she wants to, not because he will pay. She refuses and leaves. Vivian is then seen back at home with Kit, packing up to leave for San Francisco. Edward rethinks his life, and while being driven to the airport, has the chauffeur detour to Vivian's apartment building. He climbs out through the white limousine sunroof and ascends the fire escape to kiss Vivian, overcoming his fear of heights and metaphorically fulfilling her fairy tale dream. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these movie summaries. It really helps the channel out.